Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Access and Learning session of the San Francisco Tech Council. We're focusing today on artificial intelligence and the new digital divide.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew. We are a multi-sector collaborative, meaning we bring organizations from the government, nonprofit, for-profit sectors together with academia, philanthropy as well, to advance digital inclusion for older adults and people living with disabilities in San Francisco. Through our framework, we are the entity that convenes a lot of these organizations who are serving older adults or people living with disabilities, helping them get connected to broadband, get access to devices, as well as receive training. We've been around for 10 years. We are now headed into another iteration of technology advancement through AI.
Why does AI matter to you? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Some think AI is coming, but it's actually here. It's here. I was speaking and someone said, "Oh, Susan, what time did I interact with AI today?" And I said, "What time did you get up? What time did you grab your device? Did you use your face to open your phone?" That's facial recognition. Did you get on any website? Did you click on anything on your device? You're interacting with AI. Today, our goal is to give you a foundational knowledge and increase your curiosity about AI. That's our goal today, to help you lower the fear. I sit on the National AI Advisory Committee in Washington, D.C., and research shows that across the country, not even 30% of people understand AI basics. People have now heard about AI, but not really understanding it. So let me start with something simple. Have you wondered what AI is? And have you heard of predictive AI and generative AI? I'll tell you a bit about that. Today, we have two types. And the key word to that sentence is today. Today, we have two types of AI. One is predictive and one is generative AI. Predictive AI is what we interact with anytime we are clicking. Every time we click, we are creating a digital footprint. And the AI behind the scene is learning from our behavior. And how that happens is algorithms are written to teach the AI to think. The best way to describe what an algorithm is think of a recipe. Think of when you look at a cake, for example. It took a recipe to make that cake. In this case, the internet is our cake. All we're seeing is the end product and not all the ingredients. The algorithms behind the internet are telling it what to learn from us. So there's a reason, for example, on our favorite streaming sites, whether it's Netflix or Amazon Prime, there's a reason that it is recommending comedies because you are watching more comedies than anything else. Or there's a reason it's suggesting love stories because you've been watching a lot of love stories. So it's all about the algorithms. I think one important thing to remember is about our own privacy. And to remember that our online privacy is in our hands. A lot of the default choices are allowing the phone, in this case, Apple, to access more information about me. We have to proactively go in and deactivate them or identify what type of privacy controls we want. So just remember to always go to settings and privacy options and click what works for you and what doesn't, especially when it comes to cookies. Whenever we go to a website, they'll say, "Do you agree to our cookies?" The name cookies actually came from, imagine someone getting caught with their hand in a cookie jar. So someone came up with the term cookies years and years ago, because that's basically what it's doing, capturing our data. The one thing AI needs to work, the food for AI is data. And the reason AI is now happening at such a rapid pace, once again, because of our devices. So 15 years ago, we didn't have iPhones or any devices. And so we really were not creating a lot of data. But because of these devices, now we are creating massive amounts of data so the algorithms can learn from our data. Not necessarily a bad thing, because especially in the healthcare field, there are some beautiful things happening. For example, they're able to access massive amounts of data, let's say on a breast cancer patient. Instead of the doctor just looking through their files, they can compare my data with millions of files in a matter of minutes because of AI and identify the next best step. So All of these incredible things are happening because of predictive AI in healthcare. At the same time, the good and the bad and the ugly of AI, like anything else in technology, is there are biases. For example, there's old data or data that's only reflecting men or not equally reflecting women. There was a study a few years ago, a married couple, same address, same income, both applied for a loan using the same information, but he got approved and she didn't. What that meant was the algorithm behind the loan approval process was not accounting for females. So that's what you may have heard of algorithmic bias. That means that the algorithm is biased because one, it was written by someone who was not considering a broader lens, but two, it is also using bad data. So that's predictive AI. The minute you get on, you're clicking, you're creating data to help the AI work. Again, not necessarily bad, not necessarily great, but it sure is convenient, right? Predictive AI has been around for many years. In fact, I was at Facebook when I learned about AI 10 years ago, and it was already around before that. It's happening more quickly because we are creating more data. You may have heard recently about generative AI. So generative AI, and you may have heard of ChatGPT, which is created by OpenAI. In simple terms, generative AI generates a response for us based on a question, which is called a prompt. ChatGPT was released in 2022. And others have been released in the last several years. So Google Gemini, or there's Claude, which is by Anthropic, and Meta launched Llama as the llama.com on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. You'll notice all of these devices. And even if you're on Gmail, any Google product, now you can access their generative AI tool. So now there's a lot of competition out there for the answers for us are created based on data that these companies have collected. But here's the tricky part about that. When asked any given company, well, where do you get the data? They don't answer because they don't have to. And that's where policy and regulation comes in. There is no policy. It really is a Wild West. Again, good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, it's great for innovation, but it's also where things can go wrong and people can be harmed with bias information. But when using a generative AI tool, you can do things such as write an essay, write a research paper, create whales with wings flying over the ocean, and boom, you get 4 different types of graphics to choose from. So it's great for graphic artists to get ideas. You can solve math problems. Students can practice math problems. Teachers can create lessons using a generative AI tool. You can plan a birthday party. You can type in, I have these 5 things in my refrigerator. What should I plan for dinner? Or I am going to plan a party for 10. What are some ideas? Basically anything you can imagine, you can prompt a generative AI tool. These are all free. They start to charge when you want more services, but frankly, we don't need advanced services to use these tools. So that's the good. The not so good about generative AI is that it can get it wrong. It's called an AI hallucination. We can prompt, whether we're on Google Gemini or ChatGPT, any of the generative AI tools, we can ask a question. For example, I was testing it out 2 years ago, and I said, when was the Mona Lisa created? The answer I got was incorrect. Ironically, just day before yesterday, I was talking to somebody dealing with elder care, and I went through that. My parents have passed away, so I learned a lot along the way. And my friend said, no, I got on ChatGPT and it said hospice is only for the very end of life. My mom had hospice for a year, but it wasn't just the last 2 weeks of her life. There are other services with hospice. But see, generative AI didn't reflect that. So the thing about generative AI is be aware that we cannot completely rely on it, particularly if you're looking for a job. In fact, if you look at NBC Today in the Bay and search my name, you'll see an interview I did on AI and job seekers. Recruiters use AI to scan resumes before it even hits a person. And what's happening now is job seekers are going to generative AI to write cover letters or to write their resume, and they're cutting and pasting. But now there are tools that recruiters can use to identify when generative AI has been used. So what I was saying in this newscast is we have to be personal, but most important, when it comes to generative AI, we must cross-reference the information. So what you definitely do not want to do is to create a paper for school or a research paper or a paper with data, with details, because you cannot rely on it. The best thing to do is you can use Gen AI as a resource, but then cross-reference it and do searches. Go look at news articles to compare notes. The other day, I was curious. I'm doing some work with UNESCO out of Paris, and I was curious about women globally and accessing the internet. So I went to one generative AI tool and I asked that question: how many women are accessing the internet globally? And it said roughly 65%. I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I believe it or not. So let me go to another generative AI tool. I did that and it says 65%. And then I went to a third source doing a search and I found it was 65%. I was like, okay, so I'm pretty confident, roughly 65%. So I cannot stress that enough. We really cannot just rely on generative AI tools. However, it is an invaluable resource now, especially with tools like Google Gemini, which is more conversational, or Claude.ai is more conversational than ChatGPT. You can practice an interview. In the Super Bowl, one of the commercials was the dad taking care of the child and applying for a job, trying to figure out how to translate taking care of children as managing a team. He was practicing an interview with Google Gemini. Google Gemini was asking the questions and this guy was verbally answering. There are so many things out there. Most importantly, I want to call out the women on this call because we are not curious enough and we will be left behind. And that comes back to this topic of the digital divide. So I was in telecom years ago when the digital divide started, when internet access was being created and when there were issues, when it was called cherry picking, right? So only certain neighborhoods were going to get internet. And we saw during the pandemic that digital divide is alive and well. Where we are heading, women, and especially other marginalized communities, is that this isn't about internet access because for the most part, virtually everybody, I don't even know what the percentage is, has a device. So it's not about the old days, like you need to be home on your PC and you have a cable. That's not what this is. So everybody, whoever has a device, has access to AI. And this is where I'm talking about. We need to increase curiosity now. Because again, AI isn't coming, it's here now. So as an example, let's say you take two people, a male and a female, and the male knows about generative AI and can practice an interactive interview, but the female is not because women are less likely to try it. Guess who's probably going to do better on that interview? The male. So what I'm saying and suggesting is that now is a time to really create curiosity. I left the tech industry about 5 years ago to launch a nonprofit, AIandYOU, the word and, AIandYOU.org. We create free content to give it away. Because when I was in the tech industry, I realized I was saying, oh, so what you mean is, and I could see that this AI thing, I don't know, something told me this is either going to be really good or not good for a lot of people. And so what I've done is I've created very easy to understand content in short snippets. If you go to our website, you spend 30 minutes, your knowledge will increase probably 100%. And the thing too I'm learning is that people are hesitant to say they don't understand this. But here's the thing, nobody does. We're all starting at the same place. This is all new. This is unprecedented globally. So just keep that in mind, that it's okay to not know. And you know who I find is the most challenging people? Policymakers. Nobody wants to admit that they don't really understand this. So it's even more difficult to create any type of regulation because people are having difficulty understanding it. Now is a time just to be like, I don't get it. Where can I learn more? And I think we'll all be better off for that. So what's required for all of us to be on Zoom, to use our devices, are data centers. You can visualize these massive computer boxes that process all of the data. Now, back to data, we are creating more data that needs to be processed. And so more data centers are required. Those data centers are plugged in. They require electricity. Every company you can imagine, whether it's Apple or Google or Verizon, they are all grasping to buy data center space because they need to process more data. That data requires more energy. And so it is taxing on an energy grid. And so it's real. And the thing is, the more complicated the AI gets, the more processing is needed, the more electricity is needed to process that information. So there is a direct impact on climate change, but people don't want to talk about it. The flip side is that this is forcing the data center industry to push the envelope, to explore different types of energies. It's not solar. They can't turn to company X and offer more space because local cities are saying, no, you can't build another data center here. We can't take it. Our grid can't take it. And so now everybody is being forced to come up with different options.
Here's a question. There's some that are more technical, but here's Magali saying, do you know of any resources to explain AI to Spanish-speaking communities that have very limited understanding of technology itself?
I'm happy to say all of our content is in English and Spanish. And it is designed, again, to be very easy to understand. For example, when I was describing what an algorithm is, that's how I wrote the video, the 3-minute explainer video. And it shows how somebody's walking through a bakery and seeing a lot of baked goods and explaining, like, this is what an algorithm is. Or even as I was just talking about job seekers, explaining what happens, how is AI used for job seeking. All of our videos content for every topic we offer, we have an explainer video, which is no more than 3 to 4 minutes in English and Spanish, glossaries, Q&A, and news and resources. So it's there for your taking at AIandYOU.org.
Great. One of the questions that came in before the call started today had to do with some of the economic impact of not being able to take advantage of AI. You pointed out a couple of examples. For example, job seekers, those with access to AI may be better prepared than others. What kinds of things are you seeing in terms of economic impact, in terms of where people will fall behind?
What's happened is that historically, a lot of nonprofits have offered tech classes. And what can happen often, and I've been in the tech industry and now I'm a nonprofit, and believe me, I completely understand how this works, is company X will give nonprofit Y a lot of money for digital literacy on their own products. Understandably, right? There's a good business need for it. So that is a very narrow tech offering, or we're still defining digital literacy as learning PowerPoint. We need to move away from that and embrace AI literacy. If you go to our website, I created under AI basics an AI literacy pyramid. If you look at that pyramid, I designed it to help people understand that we're down here at the base of the pyramid. And what I say is, we are at Math 101. But people and tech companies, respectfully, I come from the industry, want to talk about Algebra 3. And we're not there yet. I offer to nonprofits that if you are offering tech courses, ask yourself, what is that offering? Because unfortunately, there are few of us who are offering this type of education that is not specific to a particular company or product. And that's the difference. And that's where we're going to be able to bridge this, because whether someone does not know a lot about tech or is using tech, nobody understands AI at this point because it's also new and happening so quickly.
So a follow-up question to that, which I also received before, is a lot of folks on this call, many of whom I know and work with regularly, have folks coming in who are learning how to do things like text. There's still a world out there for whom texting and QR codes are slightly out of reach. That's changing. But in terms of AI, what are some of the foundational skills if you have somebody coming in and you're doing training? And a lot of the organizations, at least from San Francisco, aren't funded by one particular company. A lot of our funding is city and it's pretty broad. But what are two things I could teach somebody, like an older adult who would walk into my office today, in terms of AI on their phone?
One is every click is creating a digital footprint, and AI is learning from us. So to be aware of our clicks. And that leads to misinformation, which we heard about during the election, or it even still exists. That's point one. Point two is on virtually, whether someone is on any social media platform, a lot of people, because AI, generative AI now has advanced so much in the last 12 months on Facebook, Instagram, even on any Google platform, whether it's Gmail or any of the Google products, you probably don't even notice it yet. There's a little line on the top that will say, would you like to leverage Google Gemini? That is really important for you all to learn. So then you as trainers can train. That is the biggest challenge that I have found. I've been at this almost 5.5 years. The leaders of nonprofits don't understand the basics. You can't be expected to teach your people the basics if you don't understand it. And so that's the most important thing. There are some other resources. Ours is AIandYOU.org. There's Common Sense Media, who uses some of our content, and they are focused on parents. There's AI.edu, and they're focused on educators. Between the three of us, we all are offering AI literacy basics for these different audiences. But we're on this together. It's all new.
All right. You mentioned at the outset that they're looking for alternative sources of energy. Do you know of any data centers or locations that are moving ahead in this area?
I don't specifically. I think they all are. They all have
Okay.
to be. Yeah, and the only reason I know is because one of my closest girlfriends is in the data center business. And what I hear from her is, we can't find space. These tech companies need more space for their big, massive servers. We can't find it. A lot of these data centers are in the Midwest and out in Virginia, not in Northern California, because there's no land. It's a land use issue. So that's step one. The data center companies or whoever's going to build the house for them needs land approval. And land approval includes access to energy.
There's this balance that you pointed out, like making sure you are taking steps to secure yourself, but also encouraging everybody to give this a try and learn as much about it. What advice do you have for people who want to limit their data footprint without limiting their use of the internet and AI? Are there?
Well, yeah, look, I go through this myself. So, and I live and breathe AI every day, all day. On one hand,
Okay,
it's
come on, B.
it's better for me as a woman, a Hispanic woman in the Bay Area, to provide data. But here's the thing. When I get those cookie notifications on these websites, it drives me mad. And I always take the time to go in and choose. And so I don't even have the right answer. I'm doing what feels best for me. I don't want to be considered for marketing preferences. I don't want to get any of your ads. But at the same time, I'm also limiting the data I am sharing about myself as a woman, Latina, and breast cancer survivor. So I don't have the answer because it really is a personal decision. I told somebody I always go through those cookie things and I say no or decline. He said, I think you're the only person I know that does. I'm like, I don't know. It just creeps me out. I feel like too much data.
So on websites, when it comes up and it says, do you want to accept or decline? We should really be paying attention to those.
You're sharing your data. They're saying, can we have your data or not? That's basically what it's saying.
David had asked earlier a question about DeepSeek, and I'll get to that, but I do want to ask this one question first, and it's coming in from an organization called Joint Family. She says, thank you for the presentation and materials. The challenge that I find hard to grasp is the mad pace at which Gen AI is advancing with little or no regard for the social risks and implications of this tech. As an intergenerational AI literacy nonprofit, we are constantly grappling with how unprepared our communities are. Are you seeing any hopeful signs in terms of adoption and responsible use nationally? Is big tech interested in working with community initiatives?
Different administrations have different feelings about regulating the tech industry. The last administration came out with an executive order on AI, specifically calling out just this: holding tech companies accountable for creating responsible AI, not regulating, but holding them accountable for themselves. That's the best they could do, right? Because Congress could not move on anything. And quite frankly, because they couldn't understand it. Someone said in DC, they said, how can we expect our policymakers to regulate AI when most of them don't even know how to log into Facebook yet? And that's true. Now, this is an entirely different political environment who do not believe in regulation as much, and they believe that it impedes innovation. It's a free-for-all right now, and there is no accountability with the tech companies. That's all I can say. Now, the one thing I do want to mention, I'll tell you now, and I promise you're going to be hearing about it. So I said there's predictive AI and there's generative AI, which is true. The third evolution coming is called AGI, and that is artificial general intelligence. That is C3PO serving as a nanny. That's a robot. For real. This is no joke. Like that's what AGI is. What's happening right now is generative AI is moving so quickly and it's getting traction. Now these companies are focused on AGI and who's going to win that first. And so the first step to AGI is called agentic AI, which are AI agents. Now that I told you this, you're going to start hearing about it, I promise you, in the next year, next months. AI agents. Today, when you go to a website and it says, do you have some questions? And here's our customer service. It's not a person anymore. It's a chatbot. The chatbots we know today are designed to answer a question back and forth. At some point, it might not have the answer, and then it'll say, hold on, let me get a representative. An AI agent is able to reason and answer the question. Speaking of the Super Bowl, there was another commercial with Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey was sitting in the rain. Woody Harrelson was not. It was for Salesforce's new AI agent. Instead of going to the web or the restaurant saying, I want a reservation at 5:15, the AI agent allows the small business owner to say to the customer, we cannot offer you a 5:15 reservation because rain is in the forecast. We will seat you inside. What people are saying now is this AI agent movement is the first step to AGI. Be aware.
So AGI, just again, it is artificial
General intelligence.
General intelligence.
AI, generative AI. Coming next is AGI, and like in between are AI agents. Basically, AI agents are chatbots on steroids. It's more of a conversational for us. So for example, there was a new OpenAI just launched. It's not public yet, but they did do a demo, a public demo. Their AI agent will allow me to go to their site. It's called Operator. I can say, I'm going to make an Italian dinner for 10. Please go find the groceries. I prefer Borelli pasta. It will do the shopping on the internet for me, put all the groceries in my Instacart basket, and then come back to me with my basket. That's what an AI agent does or will be doing.
Okay. So we've got a question here. How do you think DeepSeek may or will change the use of generative AI or predictive AI in the US? You might want to define DeepSeek briefly for folks on the call.
DeepSeek is a generative AI tool that was launched from and by China about 2 months ago. Some say it was out of left field, that we didn't see it coming. And some say that China just leapfrogged the United States in AI with this DeepSeek tool. Others say more recently that DeepSeek stole the data from OpenAI to create their tool. Bottom line is AI, it's a new generative AI tool that is faster, more efficient. And if you buy the extended services, I'm told it's 70% or 60% less expensive than the US based tools. That's what DeepSeek is. It's open for conversation on where they got their data. Did they access all the information that OpenAI is using? When I say data, OpenAI, Google, Llama, they're all getting data from Wikipedia, libraries, research papers, the internet, everything. We don't know exactly where, but it's like everything you can imagine. Nobody really wants to say exactly where they're getting their data, nor do they have to, because there's no regulation requiring them to do. So DeepSeek, especially out of China, does not need to tell us where and how they created their data. It's another generative AI tool that is said to be more efficient.
And Susan, what was the means by which they were able to have that cost reduction?
Yeah, it comes down to the chips that go into computers that process the information. AI developers need those chips to create all this information for us to be able to access it. But what DeepSeek's saying is we found a way where we don't need as many chips. And the reason it's an issue is there's a shortage in the US. So that's an advantage. So China's saying we didn't even need to have all those chips because we figured out another way to process all the information. So that's why it's more efficient.
Oh my gosh. All right.
The reality too is that you can imagine this is why people who are in repetitive skills jobs are at risk. Paralegals, admin assistants, translators are getting laid off because they're being replaced by AI. If you work with people in your community that are in repetitive skills, they need to start looking at what can help them survive the AI transition. I just learned recently that roughly 67% of recruiters today are more inclined to hire somebody if they have some level of AI awareness. You don't have to be a data scientist, but if on your resume you could say familiar with generative AI, or in my job, I create spreadsheets using generative AI tools, or you see what I mean? Something like that to communicate you have an understanding, and that will automatically give you a leg up in today's world.
So a skill to start adding in some ways that's more important than some of the other lists of things that we used to include.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. This is based on research with recruiters because they're learning also along the way.
Great. I do want to direct you back to her website, AIandYOU.org. So thank you. Have a great afternoon,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
All right, thanks.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Susan.
You're
much.
welcome. Bye-bye.